she will be coming in a little bit later and taking over this position. So right now, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Is there an approval of the agenda? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Shannon? Motion carries. And now we'd like to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Todd Kabelka, our Executive Director of Personnel Services, who is also a captain in the U.S. Navy Reserves, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Todd. And then I've also asked Dr. Baskin to read the announcements tonight.
June 2015 announcements. We would like to congratulate the 2015 Beloit Memorial High School graduates and wish them well as they begin the next chapter of their lives. School is out for the summer for the rest of our students, and we look forward to their return on September 1st. Summer school has started, and will continue through the end of July. The goal of this summer school program is to prepare students for the grades they will be entering this fall. Students will have an opportunity to explore a variety of subjects that interest them, catch up on credits, or even advance their studies in preparation for challenging work course next year. The School District of Beloit is also hosting several sites that are serving free breakfast and lunch to the kids in this community all summer long. The locations, dates, and meal times, you can call 361-3446 or visit the website at summerfoodbeloit.org, SUMMERFOODBELOIT.org. We will have a family picnic to kick off the summer food program with a free family picnic this Thursday, June 25th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Beloit Memorial High School. The information can also be found conveniently throughout the announcements on our school district website at beloitschools.net. This concludes the June announcements.
Thank you, Dennis. Next, we'll have Melissa Badger up to to give us some recognitions of our student board representatives, and thank you. Nice to see you again. Okay, Melissa.
Yes, thank you for taking time out of your summer break and coming back. I know you guys have busy schedules. Really appreciate this. So I'd like to have Maisie Lewis and Colton Bell to please join me at the podium. As we know, it's difficult being put on the spot and having to report the news, but you guys have done so very professionally, full of enthusiasm, and really appreciate your dedication to your posts. I'd like to open this up to our board members.
I guess when you came on board last year, to see all the enthusiasm and you kept us informed throughout the whole year, it was just a joy to have you here to listen to what's going on in the school district. And I guess the two things come to my mind. One, Colton, is when you were the donkey in Shrek and you did the cartwheels, and then you come here and you're just as friendly as ever without the costume, but we really appreciated you being here. And then I remember a meeting that we were at where we had it open to the students to ask about what they would like to see in our district moving forward with leadership, and you took a great role in that, and I want to thank you for that as well.
Just like to say thank you. You've done an excellent job. You've always been candid and open and honest with the board, and we appreciate that. At least I do as superintendent, that our student reps feel that they can speak openly and share their opinions. I once was in your shoes, and I believed that at that time too. So congratulations, good luck in your future studies, and don't be a stranger to Beloit. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon?
Yes.
Did you have something you'd like to say to our student representatives? I don't know if they can hear you.
Yeah, no, I'll tell them in person because I'm having a hard time hearing myself right now.
Okay. She'll connect with you later. Thank you.
Well, we have a few things for you. One is a certificate for each of you in recognition of professional service as a student representative for the Board of Education. So Colton and Maisie. And we have some nice kind of keepsakes. Thank you for serving student board representative that Michelle Shope has had ordered for you guys. So thank you for that. So one for each of you again, with the, of course, with the knight head on it. And then I know you guys were looking forward to this. But you also get to keep your nameplate. So the frame needs to put you on the wall. Would you like to say anything?
I'm going to speak on behalf of Maisie and myself, and we'd just like to thank the board for giving us this awesome opportunity. Up until this past year, I thought I was in the know of the board and what was happening, but it's great to sit up there with you guys and to actually read what's going on and to see what's going through all of you guys' minds and to speak it out thank you guys for allowing us to speak our mind and allowing us to have the forums and just make sure that our voices are heard, because that is very important. And it was an awesome year and a great opportunity. And any students that are watching, I really would say to go out for this, because it was such an opportunity, and I don't think either of us expected it to be this informational. And it was just so much fun, and it was just great. So thank you guys so much.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have citizens or delegations who want to express areas of interest not included on the agenda. And citizens may speak on business items or actions as these items are called by the board president. Again, citizens or delegations, areas of interest not included on the agenda. If there's anyone present that would like to speak on any item that is not on the agenda, you may come forward at this time. Seeing none, we will move on to the superintendent's report to the board.
Good evening. Thank you. Tonight we're going to have a report by Tasha Bell and Todd Kabelka that deals with staff and student diversity in our district. And it also deals with our commitment, my commitment that I've made to this board as superintendent to ensure at a higher rate that the reflections in our classrooms reflect the diversity within our district. Staff at all levels. We've made some changes already, some new things, new ways of advertising and recruiting. We're going to be going back to some things that were done several years back. We've already budgeted for visits to historically black colleges and universities for recruitment purposes, as well as schools that serve primarily Latino and Hispanic populations. So the board has my full commitment, and I intend to be evaluated based upon the numbers that you see tonight and going forth in the future. So with that, Tasha, welcome.
All right. Good evening. My name is Tasha Bell. I'm the equity coordinator. And this is Todd Kabelka. He's the executive director of personnel. Tonight we will be presenting a diversity profile of the school district of Beloit. So we have two main focus points for our presentation. We're going to share our student enrollment data and trends as they relate to race, ethnicity, gender, and English language learners. We will also share a school district of Beloit staff diversity profile and talk about what strategies we have in place to diversify our staff. So for this presentation, the student data was taken from WISE- for districts. The data represented is from the third Friday count that happens in September of each school year. There may have been some updates as the year went on, but for the sake of consistency, that's the numbers that we're using. So during convocation, Dr. Johnson asked us as a staff to remember why we chose to serve students. Diversity is one of the driving forces behind what we do. Beloit is a unique city, and as a Beloit native, I am very proud of the diversity within our city. Looking at the numbers, you can see that Beloit is kind of very different than the state of Wisconsin. And these numbers are based on the 2010 census. Demographically, Beloit paints a different picture than that of our state. For example, we have 15.1% of African Americans compared to the 6.3% in the state of Wisconsin. We also have 17.1% of our population are listed as Hispanics compared to 6.3. Nope, sorry, compared to 5.9 within the state. We also have 17.8% of our population that speaks a language other than English at home. The state average is only 8.6. Now we're going to look at our student enrollment by race and ethnicity. And you can kind of see the percentages, but I'm going to talk about the numbers. So you can see the percentages, but I'll also say the numbers. Our total enrollment is 7,034 students. 69 of those students identify as American Indian. 53 of those students are Asian students. 1,559 of those students are Black. 2,213 are Hispanic. 12 are Pacific Islander. 2,741 are white students, and 369 students identify with 2 or more races. All of this data is based on how parents identify their children. For example, a student may be biracial, but the parent only selects one race, so that's where we get our race information from, is self-identification. Now, if we look at gender, we have 3,460 female students, which is 49.2%, and our male students are 3,556, 50.6% of our population. Looking at our English language learners, we have 1,014, which is 14.4% of our students, are currently identified as English language learners. Looking over a 5-year span, there are a few small trends that are noticeable. So we're going to go back to the race and ethnicity and look at it over a span of 5 years. So some things that kind of stand out or maybe are a little bit noticeable. Our Black student population has remained fairly consistent over that time, and that's that grayish looking box on there. Our Hispanic student population has increased over 5 years. That's the next box up, the yellowish looking one. Our white student population has declined over 5 years, and our students who identify with 2 or more races has increased slightly over the last 5 years. Going back to gender, our male and female populations have remained the same. It's about 50-50 throughout the 5-year period. And then if we look at our English language learner population, over 5 years, the number of English language learner students have decreased. However, there have been some changes in terms of what the Department of Instruction tells us and how we identify students, and also how we transition the students out of our English language learner program. So now I'm going to turn it over to Todd, and he's going to talk about our personnel information.
Thanks, Tasha. Appreciate it. Since 1990, our office has put out what is known as the Affirmative Action Report. And what we do is we take this document and we kind of take our workforce and we report by job category, by race, and by gender who's filling what positions. And we started doing this in 1990, and we do it every year. And Beth Stibbe, who's one of the best employees in the district, she can do this in her sleep. She's so good at it. She puts out this affirmative action report that we report to the board on every October. But what we did for the purposes of this lecture is we went to Beth and we said, "Hey Beth, can you gin up the numbers that are currently in our Skyward system right now to give some accurate numbers, even though we know that we've got 45 positions that still have gone unfilled on the contracted side." So on this slide here, what you're going to see is the historical race and ethnicity percentages of our contracted employees over a 20-year period. As you can see, the size of our contracted workforce has fluctuated over time, partly due to budgetary constraints, consolidation of programs, but more recently we've instituted outsourcing as a cost-saving measure, and which has further impacted the size of our workforce. And you'll see that on the next slide. This slide gives you a snapshot of our 5-year employment trends. and includes the latest numbers from our staffing coordinator records from what Beth got for us for the contracted side. You'll note on the bottom what a contracted employee is, and it's all of those special categories. We have folks who are administrators, administrative assistants, administrative support, instructional support, secretaries, para-educators, security officers, and permanent sub-teachers. Now, the reason why we have all these is this was kind of a holdover of our collective bargaining days when a lot of these subgroups here were unionized. And so we kept them in our system as being part of the way we divide our workforce. And so they're now specifically there for us to categorize and to count. It's much easier for us just to keep them by name. But those are contracted employees. Those are individuals who work for us, have an expectation of continued employment, and get a paycheck from us regularly. Okay, this slide provides a more detailed breakdown of our current contracted employee a group by race, ethnicity, and gender. On the side, you can see the 14 and 15 data with administrators, administrative support, professional educators, instructional support. In the white is our current data that Beth pulled down not 2 weeks ago. So when you compare this information with last year, located on the side of the slide, as I said, you will note some market increases and some losses. We have experienced an increase in our percentage of minority employment in the administrator, secretarial, instructional support, security officer, and permanent substitute ranks, while slightly decreasing in the professional educator and para-educator ranks. However, with 45 positions still available, these numbers will change. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide depicts the historical profile of all employees, which include both contracted and non-contracted employees. Non-contracted employees receive letters of appointment but are considered employees at will without any expectation of continued employment. Fortunately for the district, many of these non-contracted employees, like our SSAs, which is our school supervisory assistants, and our crossing guards, though they're not contracted, they work hourly. There's no expectation of continued employment. They come back every year, and we're the better for it. We have some that have been here for 15 years. But as you can see, the numbers go from around 10% in terms of percentage of total minority over all of our employees, both contracted and non-contracted, meaning they get a paycheck. And right now we're up at about 14.37%. Excuse me. Yeah, do one more. Sorry about that.
The next one.
Yeah, yeah. Here we go. Last year, this now brings you to the last 5 years. This is the 5-year snapshot of all employees, meaning contracted and non-contracted. So what I was getting at, and I was on the wrong slide, last year's total was 15.37%. That's good, but as you'll notice, the numbers below it and the historical numbers, we're not breaking out of the pack. It's like we're on a prototype of a recruiting ship, and we don't have the contract for the real ship. We're kind of muddling along. We're kind of static, even though we haven't gone back markedly in terms of reduction of minority or percentage of minority employees. We're not surging ahead either, and especially not at the pace that our minority student population is now coming into Beloit. So we obviously have some work to do. Okay, Beth puts together what is known as a hiring summary of all employees. This is just simply a count of both contracted and non-contracted jobs that we hired each year. A lot of people that we have, they come back year after year, so we don't put their jobs up on the list. But those where we have new openings, somebody quits, somebody resigns, somebody retires, and the job becomes available, we count that as a hire. And so for the last 5 years, she's been putting together this diagram here, which gives us an indication of how many minority employees have we hired when jobs became available in certain years. And they're broken out by contractual and non-contractual positions. Okay, as you can see from the slides here, we have made some progress. We haven't made enough. We haven't made it fast enough. So to that end, we're going to be working on some initiatives that are already underway. I've developed, along with Tasha, a race and gender disclosure form, which has recently been approved by our council. In order for us to understand how well we're doing in our recruiting efforts, it's going to be incumbent upon us to know who we're attracting in real time. Now, the law precludes us from asking about anybody's race at the time that we hire them or before that we hire them. But they can voluntarily disclose that, and a lot of universities do this. So what we're going to be doing, and I'll be presenting this to the board in 2 weeks. It's just got approved by our lawyer. It is going to be a link on our WeCan website. That is our main recruiting site, where most districts in the state put their jobs. And that link will invite all applicants to any position in the school district of Beloit to voluntarily disclose their race and their gender, so that we can understand there's a business position available. Great, we just closed the position. How many minority applicants did we attract? Well, we'll check the numbers, because we will have the ability to do that. And those self-disclosure forms will be kept separate from the employment application. There will only be a few people in the district who will even have access to that information, and we'll make that clear on the application and also on the website. We have also discussed renewing our contacts, as Superintendent Johnson just said, with both HBCUs and historically Latino colleges and universities to better improve our chances at recruitment. And we just kind of tried this out not 2 weeks ago. We had an English position available at the high school, and former principal here, who is now an assistant professor of education at Auburn University in Montgomery, he called us up and he said, I may have some individuals who are minorities who would maybe want to relocate. They're at their point in their life where they're up for an adventure, and even a 20 below zero adventure, and they're ready to test their profession in different waters. So I said, that's great. And so what we did is we got our team together. We talked to the prospective applicants on the phone, told them about the district, what benefits we offer, about the climate and the culture of Beloit. And out of that group that we talked to, there was one individual who applied for the English job, for the English position. And what the principal did and the hiring committee over at the high school did, and this is what we want to do. We want to do this with all of our new contacts, or renewed contacts, with these colleges in the South. What we want to do is have Skype interviews, so nobody has to spend money to come up to Beloit or fly up. We don't spend it, they don't spend it. They can sit in the comfort of their own home, wherever they want to be, and do an interview with us as a prospective applicant for one of our positions. And we did that with this young man who absolutely wowed the hiring committee, and it wasn't the next day that he was offered the position. Unfortunately, we didn't get him on a Thursday. We got him on a Friday, so he had the weekend to think about it, and he got a job with a better offer, more central to his location. But we know that the process works now. We know that this is now it's a viable, cost-effective alternative. But what we have to do is we have to reach out to the HBCUs and the HLCUs and get Tasha down there and Michelle Hendricks, Nora, whoever is going to be on our team, and Rosa Maria, and visit these places, get with the enrollment people, get with the business people, get with the employment people, put our stuff down there, maintain that personal contact, so that when we do have positions available, it's a phone call to Fisk, it's a phone call to Mississippi Valley State, and say, we have these positions available, please give them to your education majors who are graduating. If they're interested, contact me. That's how we do it. And so that's one of the exciting things that we're going to do. We're going to have our own budget, as you can see. We want to make sure that things are adequately funded, that we don't do things on the cheap. That we make a great effort at doing this because we know it can work. We're also going to continue to try to grow our own teachers from the professional ranks also. And you can see on there, it talks about the continued support of the early childhood education program. This was something we put together last year. We had between 6 and 12 individuals in the program where they would go to Blackhawk Tech, they would do their coursework, and they would get their associate's degree with credits that would transfer to UW-Whitewater. So this was a consortium between us, and we have, I think, 6 paraprofessionals in there right now. So this is how we're going to grow our own and get teachers from those who already work for us. And what better teacher can you make than somebody who's a paraeducator? Yep, right at the bottom there. We started a expansion of personal referrals and community outreach to leverage. What that means is, in January of last year, I met with Barb Hickman and some other folks, and we talked about how we could have members of the community who know students, wherever they may be, Maryland, UW-Whitewater, doesn't matter, to reach out to those individuals to see whether or not they want to come back to Beloit. Because your best advocate is someone who already lives here. And if we could have those individuals who graduated from those colleges that we want to visit, who have those alumni connections, that's an invaluable resource for us to reach out to kids. And so we want to continue to foster that. Okay. So, yep, that should do it. If there's any questions, feel free. We're
I have a number of questions.
Sure.
It will be a series of them. My first question is to the superintendent. Is Shannon Sharmer, is she still with us?
She's
Okay. The superintendent.
Yes, I am.
Okay. I first want to ask the question of the board president. Then after she's done, I want the superintendent to respond to this question, and then you, Mr. Kabelka. What are your thoughts on these numbers? What are your impressions on these numbers?
Are you asking Shannon?
Shannon first, and then Dr. Johnson, and then Mr. Kabelka.
Are you?
And which part of the numbers, Dennis, if you could help clarify?
The entire presentation on the staff diversity. What are your thoughts on the presentation and the data that was presented to you?
It's a pretty broad question, so I guess, some of the numbers, like the numbers that was clearly delineated regarding where our students are identifying themselves and our breakdowns, I was surprised at the increase. Well, I know that our Hispanic population is increasing. I was surprised at the increase over the past 5 years. So I guess it was eye-opening. It was very informative for me there. As far as other numbers, I think that it further demonstrates why we need a commitment to hiring students or representatives in all capacities that help mirror the students in our population. So I think it further enhances our commitment and what I'm hearing the board and this administration being committed to. And so for me, I'm hopeful, and I'm glad to have the numbers so that we know where we're starting and where we need to go.
Thank you, President Sharmer. Dr. Johnson?
My reaction to the numbers is we have work to do. And as I said when I began this presentation, excuse me, I am committed, and I've made that commitment to the board. We will continue to work on these numbers. And more so, let's not talk about numbers. Let's talk about the first graders and the seventh graders that are sitting in our schools that deserve to have teachers that look like them, that deserve to have custodians and principals that look like them. There's research that is out there that talks about academic achievement levels of students from minority backgrounds increasing when they have those experiences in schools. And I think we are definitely up to the challenge of, on multi-levels, making that commitment as I've made to the board.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. And Mr. Kabelka?
Yes, not good enough.
Okay.
They haven't been good enough for years. With your minority population increasing, students increasing, I share the sentiments of Dr. Johnson, that what they bring to the class, what a minority teacher brings to the classroom, as he so eloquently stated, a teacher that looks like them not only brings something more tangible to the educational environment, but it's good for all kids, regardless of race. And as our minority population continues to increase, we're seeing a static professional educator number in terms of overall minority percentage. That needs to increase. I'm kind of tickled that now we're going to have a dedicated budget. We're going to have a plan. We're going to do what needs to be done to right the ship. So I'm all for it.
Right. Some additional questions I have and some observations. Number one, if you could turn to page 15, where it says the historical profile. It's the 1990 Miss Bell to the 2010. It says all employees. Okay. And Mr. Kabelka, as you look at this chart, let me qualify myself before I ask these questions. All of the employees within our district are important. And for the sake of time, I won't be able to ask questions about every category. But for the sake of time, I want to zero in on the African American numbers. Because in this presentation, I asked that we unpack this, because I think that there's some things that we can glean from this report. You stated that the numbers were good, and first of all, I totally disagree with you. And if we zero in the African American numbers, really the African American numbers are going down, and what's allowing the increase to take place is our increase in our Hispanic numbers. And so unpacking this allows us to see this. Mr. Kabelka, if you look at the numbers, our white population of staff members are staying pretty consistent around 86%. I did these independent numbers, so you're not going to see it on your chart. Why are we seeing the white population stay consistent and an increase in the Latino population, but we're seeing a decrease in the hiring of African Americans in this school district? That's my first question to you.
Candidates. I think 3% of all students in higher education in Wisconsin State Universities are African American. Less than 2% are in education programs. It's difficult to recruit in this state. And talk to Tasha. She'll go to regional recruiting fairs. She'll be there along with Rosa Maria. They even went to LATPRO in Chicago. Hardly anyone of color came in. They were all white. So it's difficult. That's why we're going to reach out and throw the net wider. We have to. I never said the numbers were good. I said the numbers were static. I don't like these numbers. Like you, I want to see change.
Back in the day, I believe it was Miss Barb Selmer stated that we had a large influx of African Americans who came to this district as teachers. And she informed us at a town hall meeting that it was the superintendent and the personnel director who came to those historically black colleges with contracts in hand. And in your presentation, Mr. Kabelka, you kept referencing how Tasha Bell's going to go out. Why don't you get on the plane and go as well?
Be happy to.
Okay.
Be absolutely happy to.
Okay. Mr. Kabelka, when was the last time that the diversity and affirmative action plan was updated?
That is a very good question. Since it was written in 1983, I don't know when the last time it was updated. That's why I took it upon myself, along with members of the Equality Committee, to sit down and redraft that document, to call it a diversity plan. We met for 4 months. We found a model after much research that kind of fit our needs and that most of our members liked, and we started working. And then when things kind of drifted a little bit, Dorothy and I sat down and said, I think we'd better take direction from the ad hoc committee to the board. Let's just hold up on what we're doing, and let's get more structure.
So in a meeting we had about a month ago, you were more definite in the date. Wasn't it back in the 1980s that it was last updated?
I don't know when it was last updated. I know when it was drafted, 1983.
Yes, it was.
Right.
It was, okay. My next question to you, Mr. Kabelka. What do you believe is the general perception of our Human Resource Department and our diversity staffing in our Beloit community?
I don't understand your question.
Do you believe that our community has a great deal of confidence in the hiring practices and the diversity profile of our school district?
Since my ear's not to the ground in the community, I really don't know. But I can guarantee you, if you want to walk the halls of COLAC or any other building in this district and go up to people and say, how's the Human Resources Department? I think you'll probably get many people who come up to you and say, I'm here because of them, namely me.
Thank you for answering those questions for you. I have a bunch of other questions, but I'm going to hold on asking those questions. It's because I had a conversation with our superintendent, Dr. Johnson, in our individual board meeting, and we've had a good discussion. He's made it very clear to me that this is an important issue and that the district is going to put the resources necessary for us to address the diversity issue. Let me go on the record to say that these are embarrassing numbers. These are unacceptable numbers. And the record should reflect, as I've stated before, in the past, I did not have confidence in our former superintendent, and that's why I spoke out against him. And I do not have confidence in our Human Resources Department. If you go out on the street and you talk to various people in the community, they perceive it to be a good old boy network, and they believe that there's games that's played in our Human Resources Department. Most recently, I watched a hiring process where a lady, an African-American lady with a PhD who wanted to apply for the district. She was not afforded the opportunity to interview for a position, but a person who didn't have exceptional credentials was brought into the interview. And the perception in the community is that there are games that are played when it comes to truly wanting to hire people of color in the district. One of the reasons why I ran for the school board is when I came here and I looked at the administrative table, all white people. We have no diversity. One of the strengths of our school district is the diversity of our students. Can you tell me, either you or Dr. Johnson, how many African American head principals are there in this district?
We're going to have one.
How many do we have now?
None.
None. Mr. Kabelka, could you tell me how many African American administrators are in central office?
None.
Okay. And Mr. Kabelka, in the job description, in whose job description does it state that the diversity plan and affirmative action is responsible for? Whose position description is that?
Mine.
Thank you. Let me close by saying I had a meeting with our new city manager last week, and we had a discussion about diversity. And she stated to me, which I found was very impressive and profound, and Lori Luther stated to me that anyone that finds excuses to why we don't have diversity, they're lazy. And this is a major problem. From all sectors of this community, people who supported me, they said, Dr. Baskin, we must deal with the diversity issue. We must deal with it openly. We must deal with it honestly. Let me close by going on the record by complimenting Ms. Tasha Bell. You've done an excellent job for this district. You went through some difficult times, and you made some difficult decisions. And I don't believe people publicly commended you for that. I want to go on the record and tell you that, and to continue to fight for this district, because this district is just as much yours as it is anyone else's. Thank you, President Shermer.
Are there any questions, any further comments or questions? The only comment that I would like to make is that I know, particularly with Whitewater and Todd or Tasha, perhaps you can help me with numbers, but when we did do, when we went out to Whitewater and we looked at educators that are coming out of Whitewater that are graduating and that hopefully we could recruit, what were the number of minority candidates that were of the graduating class that if we were to be able to take in 100% of those that Whitewater was graduating, how many was there? Because if I recall correctly, there was one.
Right.
And so what my challenge would be to anyone in our audience or anybody that's listening, we need to do something different. We need to expand our horizons. We definitely are engaged and committed to that effort. However, we also need some new ideas. If there are ideas of where or how we can actively recruit and bring in individuals that are diverse as well as qualified, help us figure out where to go, how to do it effectively. Because I know that the Wisconsin colleges are not, unfortunately, are not producing those individuals. So any ideas, please feel free to bring them to Dr. Johnson, myself, Todd, Dennis, any board members. We're a team going forward, and we need to take any and all ideas to that end. Todd, and then Dr. Baskin, please.
Yeah, just for the record, that one solitary UW Whitewater student, she works for us. Worked for us met her, had her in my office. Excellent educator. She works for us.
Dr. Baskin?
In response to your comment, President Sharma, we have more schools in the state than UW Whitewater.
Absolutely.
Let me finish. We have UW Milwaukee, we have UW Parkside, and we have other states who produce African American, Latino, Southeast Asian candidates who teach in the district. The record reflects if you value something, you put a premium on it. If you put a premium on it, you will receive it. And the last comment that I'm going to make, to ensure that we address this serious issue, because very much like we had the bullying issue, I believe that the diversity issue is at the top of our concerns, is I'm going to be discussing with my fellow board members. The Atlanta Public Schools engaged in an equity report, and I'm going to talk with my colleagues and ask them that we hire a consultant and engage in an equity report to find out if there are any operational or systematic barriers that's preventing us from hiring candidates. And let me close by saying, President Sharma, you referenced that it's difficult finding those candidates. If you recall, in my guest commentary some months ago, I knew 5 African American males who had PhDs and master's degrees who wanted to work for this district and was not provided that opportunity. So I want to make sure that we're very serious about this issue and that we don't present any artificial barriers to giving our students what they need, not only to excel in the classroom, but to prepare them for this diverse world. As I close, as I said before, this is embarrassing, it's unacceptable, and we're going to revisit this in another year, and I hope Dr. Johnson's report is a lot better. I'll even go as farther to say that I hope that with our new assistant superintendent that comes in, that's going to be responsible for this area, he will consider looking at making changes in our human resource leadership here in the school district of Beloit. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you for clarifying. And I wasn't trying to assert that there's only the one school that produces educators. That's simply the one that I had heard what the numbers when we went out there for recruitment. So again, my desire was to ask the public what, if any, ideas you may have that can help us in this area, because I believe, as you believe, it's an area of importance And I truly believe that we're committed to it, and I think that you will see a big difference by next year. So, moving on, we have reports to the board. The first one is the Equality Committee report, please.
Hi, it's me again. I don't have a PowerPoint for this one. I want to give you all an update of what's been going on with equality. It has been a very busy and discussion-heavy year for us in equality, and I think that the people who are on equality would echo my sentiments about that. In April, based on our charge for the board, we decided to think of ways to engage our parents and kids. And one of those ideas we had was to work with a small group of students from Merrill. And this is really the brainchild of Brandy Herford and Angie Mapaz. They kind of spearheaded this session. So what we did for this session was we reached out to some community volunteers to help a small group of African American boys with their reading at Merrill. And based on timeline, as I'm telling you, this is April. So we're looking at a few sessions. We will have an update on the outcomes. Angie is actually presenting that at our next meeting in July. But we also have like some of our volunteers in the audience as well. It was a great experience. We're looking to get that feedback from the students as well as our volunteers. So I don't want to give away too much in terms of what's going on, but that was one of the things that we worked on. Also, one of the people that Todd just referenced in our previous report, we also heard from Amber Baugh, and I'm totally going to say that Amber was one of my former students. Love her dearly. UW Whitewater grad, one of my former Elbert Bound students. Love her, one of those very special people who, even as a high school student, knew that she wanted to go into education. So Amber texted me, as she usually does, hey, can I come see you? Yep, come on, you're coming to Equality. And we kind of just picked her brain. She was finishing up her student teaching the first 9 weeks. She talked to us as a committee about her experience. She loved it. She was student teaching at Gaston. She gave us insight to her experience as a student teacher. And one of the things that, as we move our discussion forward, going back to the previous report, one of the things that Amber said made the biggest difference for her was the ability to build relationships. Every time that Amber texted me, I made her meet me here at COLAC. Amber, you need to talk to real teachers. You know, when she was getting discouraged, she was hurt. Hey, guess what? I'm going to take you down to curriculum to introduce you to some other people. So she built her own support network by coming into COLAC, and that ultimately influenced her to stay in Beloit as opposed to going to some other districts. So we got to hear that as an equality committee, and we were just all happy. And of course, you know, recent graduate, getting a whole bunch of old people don't know you, felt good to her too. Also during our April meeting, we decided that we want to continue to work as a committee in the summer. I've been on equality for over 10 years, and I think this is the first time that, in my experience, we've decided to meet over the summer. So I told them, I'm here all summer, y'all, we can do this. And they're like, let's do it. So we will be continuing our work in the summer. In May, we had discussions about another piece of our charge, which is to engage our parents. And with that, we decided that we're going to do parent information sessions, not a sit and get parent session. We want to present information, we want to hear questions, we want to give them feedback in real time, not just, let me explain testing to you, and then the parents are like, I don't even know what you're saying. So we're working on that. And our discussions in May were like, okay, we can't be everything to all people. How do we decide to do this? Where do we focus? So we had some really rich discussion on that, and that was honestly the majority part of our meeting. We were fortunate that Melody was actually able to get out of Todd in enough time to join us for the meeting. And one thing that she said that sparked so many ideas was that at Todd they do these monthly parent sessions where parents come in all the time, and we're like, tell us more, what else happens? And so she explained all the different activities that they do, the attendance rates and all these things. So as a committee, we were like, we want to hear more from these primary principals, because if they are having great attendance rates at these monthly meetings, maybe we just piggyback on that, or maybe we just look at a different grade level. So Melody got a lot of questions that I'm sure she wasn't intending on getting, but she did help us. So what we decided to do was that I would send an email out to our primary principals and gather more information, so then that we can kind of decide on which grade level we want to, so that obviously we would invite all parents, but how do we focus? What programs at which schools can we kind of tie in our parent talkback sessions? So that's our April and May recap of our awesome equality committee. Any questions?
Thank you, Tasha. Actually, this morning at Kiwanis, I had a question from an individual that is part of the small group meeting for creation of the diversity plan and wondered where they fall in relation to the equality committee and our diversity committee and do you have, and to be honest, I said, honestly, I don't know because it's not an ad hoc of the board. So I'm not as familiar with the work, and I think, Todd, it's been under your direction. So if you could, I promised her that I would follow up with her, because since it's not an ad hoc committee of the board, I really could not answer that for her.
Yeah, this was a group that decided to form itself from the Equality Committee. When we realized that the Affirmative Action Plan was from 1983, most of the information in there is outdated. Tasha and myself said, I think we need to start looking for a diversity plan. And so with her intern, we started looking around, doing some research, and found a diversity plan which was constructed and enacted by Fairfield County Schools just north of Cincinnati. And it was very simple, but it held school districts and their staffs accountable for their minority goals, their minority hiring goals and diversity goals. And so it was easy to read. We got our group together and we said, let's take a look at this. Maybe we could start talking, maybe putting pen to paper. Let's look at this issue right now from where we stand in 2015. And so we called the drafters of the plan, talked to the individual who was there and who was behind the plan, and picked their brains, picked her brain. I know there's been something said about copyright and whether or not we'd violate copyright laws. No, I received permission from her, of course. So it's an informal group, but it is a group of the Equality Committee. And as we started coming up with ideas, we started floating. We floated toward one area, floated toward another. We weren't focused. So Dorothy, myself, and Tasha sat down and we said, okay, where are we going with this committee? There is an ad hoc committee of the board that's charged with these types of issues. Perhaps we should get our direction from them, and we decided to do that. So we're in a holding pattern right now. All of our group is still together. We know who they are, and I mean, they've done some great work so far. But once we get direction from the ad hoc committee, we'll be more than willing to assist in any way we can.
So thank you for that. If I could make a small request then, because whenever we have individuals in the public that are willing to help and offer their time, I think because we are in a holding pattern, they're at least what I was hearing this morning from one member is they're kind of wondering when they may be picked back up and start running. Could we just shoot an email out to all those that were active on that and let them know that we're still in process and it's still important and our projected time frame to meet again is whenever it is?
Absolutely.
Outstanding. All right. Thank you. Tasha, does that sound?
That works.
All right. Excellent. Dr. Baskin?
I'm glad we talked about this because it finally came out that the Affirmative Action Plan was last updated in 1983. The record should reflect that's 32 years ago. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Next up, we have committee reports with Finance, Transportation, and Property Committee. Dr. Baskin, please.
Yeah. Our chair, Mr. Winkleman, is out today, so we've asked that I give the report. The meeting was on June 9th. The meeting was called at 6:09 p.m. There was the approval of the agenda. There was the election of the vice chair, which is Dennis Baskin. We did the approval of the May minutes. There were no purchase orders between $15,000 and $25,000. There was a discussion about the Wisconsin Family Ties, the parent-peer specialists. We approved 2 parent-peer specialists for the next 2 years, which are grant funded. There were 2 requests for waiver of rental fees. We discussed the CISA 2 contract for the 2015-2016 contract. There were a number of budget adjustments, and we had a budget overview in which Janelle did an awesome job of giving us a budget overview, a forecast, assumptions, reductions, budget shortfalls, and was very informative. There was another waiver of rental fees, and then there was the adjournment at 7:15 p.m.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments? Seeing none, let's move forward then to curriculum. Dr. Anderson-Levy, please.
As the vice chair of this committee, I get to do this presentation in Mr. Akam's absence. So there's one or a couple actually of items for information. Mr. Garcia updated the committee with the results of the participants in the program, students from the Beloit Learning Academy working in the community, students who are 18 or older participating with employers in the community. Also at that meeting, we had 2 action items that were or that have been sent to the board, and both involve purchasing material, classroom material. So one was about the AP Psychology instructional material adoption, where teachers requested that the district provide funds to pay or to update. The last update of this textbook was the 6th edition that they have been using over several years, and now there's a 10th edition that they would like the district to purchase. The cost of their first choice, because there are a couple of choices. The latest edition is $9,300. That's the 2014 edition. There's a publication date of 2011, and those textbooks actually cost more. The second action item was instructional material for 4K instruction. The first choice of the professionals materials at a cost of $71,000 versus the second choice, which is at a cost of $84,000. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments? Seeing none, let's move to policy and personnel. Nora, please.
The Policy and Personnel Committee met on May 26th, for personnel recommendations prior to the business meeting. Our full committee meeting was on June 9th, and there are several first reading policies that have been moved forward for this evening, for action this evening, as well as one policy for second reading. Prior to going into the policies, though, we passed a resolution authorizing board hearing officer, board expulsion officer to determine our pupil expulsions. We do this annually this time of the year, and so that when the new school year begins, we have 2 professionals that come in and help us with the expulsion hearings. Policies for first reading include the academic support system. It was formerly referred to as reading referral system, and or the response to intervention. That will be our first one of the first policies that we will look for action tonight to move forward as the first reading. Then we tabled a policy on charter schools, just updating that policy, nothing real major there. As I have said many times before, we have 890 policies, and many policies are old, and some of the policies we are looking at tonight might even be 20 years old. So as we move forward, though, in that June 9th meeting, we had a presentation by Emily Pels. How do you pronounce her last name? Pels? And I just call her Emily. Our Executive Director, Pupil Service, and Stacy Strussel, our Mental Health Specialist. And they were explaining to us about nonviolent crisis intervention and how educators go through this training, and it offered the training to us as well. But it's an excellent training that all board members found to be very interesting. And again, it's to diffuse situations to avoid restraint and seclusion whenever possible. So we had that discussion. Other policies for first reading include student involvement and decision making, and also the use of seclusion and physical restraint, which I just mentioned. And then a second policy for second reading include policy 343.1, Rule 1, elementary time allotment guidelines. So those are the policies that we looked at for updating, and they will be voted on tonight. In addition, we talked about personnel recommendations again, and Mr. Kabelka informed us that our staff have until July 1st to submit the retirement requests, and after that there is a fee, I guess you'd call it a fee, a penalty fee, if they do not give us the resignation by then. And it helps us to better plan for the upcoming school year, what staff we need to hire, and so that's why that date is in there. We also had a legislative update that John Acom presented to our committee, and the topic of discussion had to do with the proposed state budget and how it might affect our district. Finally, we are continuing with the update of our policies, but there's one interesting one that I hope will come forward next month, and it's called the high school credit for 8th grade math. And the law has changed where 8th graders can now get credit for, I believe it's algebra in the 8th grade. But in order for them to get credit, we have to create a policy, so this will be a brand new policy. And that's what was discussed on June 9th in the Policy and Personnel Committee, of which Dr. Baskins is a member, our vice president, and so is John Winkleman, who is not here tonight. Any questions?
Seeing none, thank you, Nora. We're now at the place on the agenda where we are at the consent list. At this point, I would ask for an approval of the items marked with an asterisk on our consent list.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Next up for business action items, we have Wisconsin Family Ties Parent Peer Specialist. Page 60 to 64 in your packet.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. CISA 2 contract.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? I would ask that we make a friendly amendment to reduce Professional Resource Center Level 2 to a Level 1. I believe everybody received the email indicating the cost for the visit, and the visit was a one-time visit. We did have it this past year. It's where the CISA 2 individual comes out and not merely, but explains to staff what resources are available. I think we've had good utilization just for the, is it about $1,800, I want to say, Emily? Was that how much it was for the visit? $1,600 to $1,800. If we could rotate that every other year, it's $1,600 to $1,800 that we wouldn't have to spend this year. So if the maker of the motion and the seconder would be amenable, I would like to move it forward with reducing the professional resource level to a Level 1.
So agree.
Agreed.
Excellent. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We're at budget adjustments.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. AP Psychology Instruction Materials Adoption.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? Dr. Johnson, I'm not certain if you can answer this, but knowing one of our resignations was our AP Psychology educator, do we have an individual in place, if we purchase these materials, that will be able to conduct this class next year?
We have staff in the social studies department with the proper certification to teach AP Psych, and I would imagine in the perusal of candidates to fill other vacant positions, they will look for that certification too.
Outstanding, thank you so much. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4K Instructional Materials Adoption, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And resolution authorizing board hearing officer, board expulsion officer to determine pupil expulsion for 2015-2016 school year. Because this is a resolution, the maker of the motion will need to read the synopsis of the resolution as well as page 88 and 89. As well as, typically there's a number. Not on this one? Okay. The motion itself? Verbatim? Excellent.
I believe I made the motion, didn't I? Yeah. Oh, I thought you said originally, you mean the previous meeting or today?
In the previous one, I think you did, Dennis, so if
Yes.
you want to do it, you have practice.
Sure.
That would be great.
The administration recommends that the Policy and Personnel Committee approve the resolution to authorize the board hearing officer / board expulsion officer to determine pupil expulsions under Wisconsin State Statute 120.13 1E 1 to 4, effective July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Discussion? And why this is important is if we were not to make this motion this evening, the board legally could be the one who holds those hearings. However, then there isn't a separation or there isn't that next step to be able to review the actual expulsion process. So it puts a lot of, by us taking this extra step, it gives the board one opportunity or the students one more opportunity for a second perusal. And it makes it a much cleaner process and a much less biased, if there could be a bias ever imparted. So thank you for the motion and the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. We are now at policy 342.61, academic support system.
I'd like to make a motion to approve H, I, and J, which include all the first reading policies, which are Policy 342.61, Academic Support, Policy 342.61, Rule 1, Response to Intervention Framework, Policy 442, Student Involvement in Decision Making, and Policy 447, Use of Seclusion and Physical Restraint. Those are our first reading policies to move forward, and I would like to make a motion to do so.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? And again, we'll have the opportunity for this to come back to Policy and Personnel for second reading. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We're at Policy 3.1, Rule 1, Elementary Time Allotment Guidelines for second reading.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We're at Personnel Recommendations. Please make certain that we're looking at the updated exhibit for personnel recommendations. Thank you. So we're looking at Exhibit A, revised date of 6/23/15.
I would like to make a motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We are now at discussion items. Are there items of interest for consideration at future meetings that board members would like to request? Nora?
I would like to have another update with the pool now that it's open
Thank you.
at some point, before school opens.
So July or August.
Yes.
Others? Dr. Baskin?
In our previous meeting, we had a good discussion about expulsions and the direct effects and indirect effects. Nora, in our discussion, help me here. What are we saying? We need to discuss. It's not only the process, but the consequences of it and the additional support that the district could offer to reduce expulsions. I don't know how you want that worded, President Sharma, but there you go.
Thank you. Are there other items? Otherwise, let's talk about future board meeting dates. We have committee meetings coming up on July 14th. So Finance, Transportation and Property, Curriculum and Instruction, and Policy and Personnel. And there will most likely also be a special board meeting that evening. And then our next business meeting or televised meeting will be held here again on July 28th, 2015. With that, folks, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.